Hey, Matt here. I want to talk about Testfully Markup Language. Up until now, if you wanted a way for syncing your collections with the Git repository, you could only export your collections in JSON format, which Testfully would give you a big JSON file, and you would be able to just persist that one in the Git repository. And then if your colleagues happen to need to use the same collection, they had to import that collection and then use it. And what if the collection changed by another colleague? Then they had to export it again, and then you need to re-import it to pull the latest version. So this import and export process is not great user experience, and we have received that feedback a few times from our users. So with that said, Testfully Markup Language is going to solve that problem and many other problems that you may face when you want to collaborate with your colleagues or you want to share your collections. Right now, Testfully Markup Language is a file format that is supported with Testfully Offline, and we are going to introduce that one to Testfully Cloud Workspaces, and Testfully CLI soon will be updated to have the good understanding of the Testfully Markup Language and how to use it. To start with, let me give you a demo of how you can use Testfully Markup Language to create a collection, sync it with the Git repository so other colleagues can also pull the same Git repository and have that collection working on their end. So I have Testfully Offline up and running for me. So I will click on the plus button here and then new collection. On the latest version of Testfully Offline, which is 1.176.1, and we released it in July, this interface was introduced for creating a new collection. So I am going to call this collection Rick and Morty API. It's an API that I love, and I usually use it for demo. So the collection type, we are going to be asked what kind of collection we want to create, and we want to select disk storage with Git integration. So that's the type of collection that takes advantage of Testfully Markup Language and enables Git integration. So when you select that one, the app asks you where do you want to store your collection information. So for this one, you can point it to a Git repository. It doesn't need to be a Git repository. In fact, it can be just a standard directory in your file system. It can be a Git repository. And if you want it to be a Git repository, it doesn't need to be at the root of that Git repository. So you can place it anywhere. So for the purpose of this demo, I have created a directory and call Rick and Morty API. So this is the location of my collection. So create this folder, and once you created that one, you can click create to create that collection for you. So now the collection is created and it's empty. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open my code editor, which is pointing to the exact same location. And here you can see that a file was created for me called index.toml. So Testfully Markup Language uses Toml as a syntax, so we didn't roll out our own bespoke syntax. We thought that it's easier for you to take advantage of an existing syntax. So we figured out that Toml is the simplest and the most minimal syntax. So we decided to use this syntax for our file definitions. So here I have a file called index.toml, which represents the information about the collection that I created. So let's forget about this one for a second, and I want to create a new request inside this collection. And I wanted to, for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to create a few requests that hit Rick and Morty API. So for that purpose, let's just go look at the documentation for Rick and Morty API and see what they have. So for the REST API, they have the endpoint for getting all of the characters. So I will just copy that endpoint here and set it to get all characters. So let me send this one to see if it works. Yep, it worked. So now I have a request that is inside this folder called get all characters. So let's save that one. And if I come back to my code editor, you can see that there is a new file called get all characters, which is the matching my request name. And inside that one, I have some information about the request. So it defines the schema, and that defines the type of the file. It's optional, you can remove it. Name of the request is a sequence, it generates a random number that gives you the option to sort the items. So you can just change this one to any value that you want. The method is get, and that's the URL for me. So what I'm going to do while we are on this page, so I am going to, let's just copy this URL, which is one of the episodes. So I will create a new request called get a single episode and just paste that URL. So let's click send. That works. It just fetched that single request for me. If I save this one, you can see that a new file was created for me for that one as well. So what I want to do now is that I want to organize my collections with folders. So I will create a folder for characters and a folder for episodes. So I'm going to create a folder called episodes and a folder called characters. As I created those folders are also created in my file system, so it represents the same structure. Now, what I want to do to move all characters into the characters folder and episode to the episode folder as well. So now we see that in the tree for my folder, those the items are moved as well. So characters has get all characters, and I can see here characters has get all characters, and episode has episode as well. So you can see that each folder also has a file called index.toml, which contains the metadata for that particular request or collection. In fact, if the only thing that you have is a folder name or a collection name and you don't need any other metadata, you can delete these index.toml files. You don't need them. You would need them only if the order of your folders matter to you, or if you want to store more information. So let's actually go through some of the settings for requests and show you how you can customize your request. So let's open get single episode. You can see that the ID is hard-coded. So if I want to just create a route param called ID and set a value for it here and save that one, you can see that that param is also created here for me. So let's say I want to have a query param called format and the value is JSON. So if I save that one, you can see now the format is also attached to my file as a query param. Another thing that I can do is that let's just set a header. So let's say X device ID is Mac OS 15. So that header is now part of my request as well. So pretty much the entire request configuration in Testfully can be represented using a field. So for example, if I want to set let's say authorization, assume that this has authorization, I could actually set the authorization here as well. So I'm going to just pick basic auth to just give you a demo. I will just, username is Teddy and the password is bear. So if I save the basic authentication, you can see here we have a block of code that allows you to define the basic authentication for that particular request. So you can see that each file represents one single object within your collection, that is a request, a folder, a subfolder, or a collection. So that's how you can use this concept. So one of the things that we have right now, which I don't like it, is the concept of that the URL is hard-coded in our all of the requests. So we have 2 requests right now. If it goes to 200 and all of them are hard-coded, it's going to be a bit annoying, to be honest. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to define a variable in my collection called base URL and then use that one in all of my requests. So if I come to the collection and go to variables, here, I'm going to call it base URL with that value. That's it. So if I click on the index.toml, which you can see the location of the file, it's representing my collection because it's at top of the tree. And now I have a field called variables, and inside it I have base URL. So I could add anything else here as well. So it doesn't need to be just one. We got that one. So if I go back to my request now, what I could do, I could just get rid of hard-coded and set that one. And now you can see that the base URL is still loading correctly. So I will do the same thing with getting all characters. And now you can see that all of my requests are updated to represent the correct URL. So another thing I wanted to show you that for collections, also same concept. You don't need to basically have variables. You can just anything else. So what I'm going to do, going for scripts in the after response, I want to write a test case that when I send a request, it needs to return 200 OK. So I will just create a test case here. Should return 200 OK. And then expect response.code to equal 200. So I save this request. I save this script. If I go to my file, you can see that a post response block was added with this script. So if I wanted to change this one, I can just change it here as well. I don't need to necessarily go to my editor. So that's very straightforward. So now that you have these files, you can just go ahead and push them in a Git repository. Right now, we don't have a Git sync from within the app, but again, that's one of the features that we are currently working on it. And in the next release of the app, you will have this option. You can just push, pull, switch branches, and just work with it. So now I gave you a demo. I want to take you through the documentation a little bit and show you how it works. So if I go to Testfully Docs website, you can see that we have a section in our left sidebar called Testfully Markup Language, which demonstrates to you the purpose of this language and why we created this one. As I mentioned, it uses Toml, which is very simple and straightforward. There is even a short Toml introduction that you can read for 5 minutes and become familiar with this syntax. And each file in Testfully, as I mentioned in TFML, represents an object that is a request, a folder, subfolder, or a collection. So for each of those objects, we have a documentation page. So you can click on that one, for example, I just opened the request one, and here we have information about all of the supported fields and how you can use them. Most fields are optional. You don't need to set them value. They have default values. And if you want, you can set those as well. For example, you can set URL. You can set sequence for the request. If you want a request within the folder have a specific order, so you can use the sequence to sort them. For GraphQL query and GraphQL mutation requests, you can define the query or mutation using these fields, and a whole bunch of other things that I don't go through, but you can just have a look at that one and see how you can use it. So as I mentioned, we introduced TFML with Testfully Offline, so you can now create these collections that sync with the Git repository and makes collaboration in an offline environment very easy and straightforward. The next step for us that we are going to introduce this capability into Testfully CLI, which means that if you have a collection using TFML, you can just pass it to Testfully CLI, and Testfully CLI will be able to run the requests and test cases using that exact file format. Once we are done with that one, we go to the Testfully Cloud and allow you to create collections using file and sync it in real time with your Git repositories. So that's for now. Please give it a try and share your feedback because this is a very new feature, and we are looking to have your feedback on how we can improve the product and help you to have a better Git-based integration.